Aloha. All right, guys, so welcome to week 3. This is your assignment number 3 online video tutorial. In this video, we are going to learn how to create a segue, and we're going to learn a little bit about IBOutlets and changing the properties of some of our UI elements. So let's go ahead and get started. Remember, before you begin, you need to clone your Xcode project or open an Xcode from GitHub if you are not working on the same computer that you created Hackwitch number 2. As a reminder, this is a continuation, assignment number 3 is a continuation of Hackwitch number 2. So please be sure that you are using that same Xcode project file before you get started. We're going to create something called Segues. That's the first part of this tutorial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the standard editor, which means just storyboard will show up. And we're going to open up the utilities panel. And you can actually move things around in the view controller. You can actually pick up the view controller if you click on it. You can drag it to a desired location in the storyboard. You can go up and down. You can go left and right. But you want to make some space because we're going to be adding another view controller to our storyboard. So let's go ahead and type view controller. Here's another view controller. And we're going to create something called a segue. And that segue is going to be triggered by, you got it, another button press. So let's go ahead and grab another button. Let's go ahead and move this guy up. And then we can centralize this button. And we'll go ahead and call it segue. Segue push. Center it if you like to. So we're going to select this button. We're going to press Control and then drag that little hand over here to the next view controller. And our action segue is going to be show. And you can see that a segue has been created. So this is called a segue, a storyboard segue. And when this button is pushed, it's going to segue to this view controller. So let's go ahead and put a label on this second view controller here. Okay? And we're just going to leave it like that. And let's run everything in the simulator and see what happens. Okay, so we're running it on the iPhone SE. All right, so let's go segue push. And there we go. We have it's pushed over to the second view controller. Wonderful. Remember that each view controller, right? Each view controller on our storyboard needs to have a corresponding code file associated with it in order for you to write code to make something happen on a specific view controller. Remember that this first view controller, as part of our default, this first view controller, Xcode already gives you a viewcontroller.swift file. For this second view controller we added right now in our project navigator, there is no corresponding code file. So we're going to actually have to create that file. We're going to go File, New File. And we're creating a Cocoa Touch class file. And remember that we want it to be for iOS. We're going to hit Next. And we're going to call it Second View Controller. Because remember, we can't just leave it viewcontroller.swift. That name for that file corresponds to only that first view controller. Okay? And we want to make sure the language is in Swift. We want it to be in this Hackwitch 2 folder here, which corresponds to this folder right here. And we're going to go ahead and hit create. Now we've added a new file. We've created and added a new file. Let's go back to main.storyboard. So the trick here is, although we've added a new viewcontroller.swift file called secondviewcontroller.swift, right now it's not partnered up. It's not linked up with this view controller. And how do I know that? If we go into the identity inspector, we can see that there is no class file associated with this view controller. Instead, we actually have to manually set this view controller to be secondviewcontroller.swift. So we actually have to link the view controller to the code file. And right here, we see it in the drop down. So I just press this drop down arrow here and I can set it to second view controller. And you just want to make sure you hit enter. Now, if you click on the first view controller, you can see that this one is named second view controller. So now we've got everything linked and connected. We're able to write some code. I want us to focus on the second view controller. We're going to go ahead and put another button on this view controller. And let's call it change color. And what we're going to do now is we want to create an IBAction. So let's run through this real quick. We're going to create an IBAction that changes the background color of this view controller to blue. So we want to select this second view controller first, and we want to bring up that corresponding second view controller.swift file. At this point, let's also get rid of the panels as well. Okay. So sometimes you'll run into this issue where you'll select something on the storyboard and sometimes the corresponding file doesn't show up. If that's the case, you can always manually go to that file, okay? But in this case, I'm linked to the correct one. So once again, if you're not linked to the correct one, go up here to automatic, go to manual, go to Hackwitch 2, and then you can actually select the file from here. So how do we create an IBAction? Does anybody remember? First, we want to click on that button. We're going to hit Control, drag. We want to make sure that connection is an action. And we can say change color button pressed. And notice that everything is in camel casing here. And this is where we're going to write our code. So remember I told you that what we want to happen here is on button press, we want the background color of the view controller to turn blue. Let's see if we can make that happen. Okay, so one thing I sort of want to point out before I move forward with the code here is that remember that the view controller manages different views that are on or contained within this specific view controller. So we can put other views onto this view controller. Inherently, a view controller already contains something called a UI view. So what we're doing here is we are actually changing the color of the view, but it appears that we're changing the color of the view controller. So before we get started on writing the actual code for this button press, for what we want to happen, I just want to actually make a correction here. So on the button press, we want the background color of the view to turn blue. So what we need to do is we need to go through the view controller, get to its view, and then we're going to access the UI view's background color property, and then at that point we're able to set the color to blue. Okay, so remember, we need to first access the view controller, and we call the view controller self. Okay, then we need to access its view. Okay, its UI view. Then we're going to go ahead and access the view's background color property. Okay, so that's the first part of our statement. Now the second part is setting the color. So we can use UI color. UI color is the class of colors that we use in Swift. And then we are going to access the blue color. And this is the line of code that will turn the background color of the view to blue upon the button press. Okay, so remember, we've created that IBAction and we want it to execute this line of code when we press the button. So let's see what happens. All right, this is exactly what we wanted to happen. We wanted to change the background color of the view. That's exactly what we did. Good job, everybody. All right. So we're going to get back to our main.storyboard. Let's just kind of get rid of all this stuff here. And we're still going to be focusing on the second view controller here. So if you guys notice on our view controller right now, we've got this button called change color and we have a label and we haven't changed the text of that yet. What I want to do now is we're going to go through some of the steps to have the text in the label change upon this button change color being pressed. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So we have this selected. We're going to go into this assistant editor view, and so as you can notice, this is a perfect example. My second view controller.swift file didn't show up, so I need to manually look for that file. Here we go. And I'm back where I want to be. Okay, so another thing that we've created IB actions 2 times now in this HackWitch. The other thing we need to do is we need to tell the view controller. So right now it might be kind of hard to understand, but right now there's no indication in this code file. There's no indication in this code file that this label exists on this second view controller. So what we need to do is we are going to create something called an IBOutlet so that in our code we're able to access this label, this particular label. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to select the label. We're going to control drag right underneath the word class and we're going to let go. This time you need to make sure the connection is an outlet because we're creating an IB outlet. And we can call it first label. Okay? So make sure you got all of that. And we've created an IB outlet. So notice that there's some familiarity here. So you guys remember that we declare variables with starting with this word var, V-A-R. So I want you guys to think of IB outlets as variables. So we're able to access and set properties, make assignments to these IB outlets. And that's exactly what we're going to do down here. So the first thing I want to do here is I want you guys to figure out how to set first label, right? That's what this outlet is called. How to set first label to a string. So that's going to be your assignment. The rest of the assignment, that's what I want you guys to figure out. And let's leave a comment here so that you guys have some sort of reference about what I want you guys to do. So on button press, set first label to the string. Remember, it has to be a string. I did it. So you might be thinking to yourself, okay, so she wants me to set the label to the string I did it when the user presses the button. I have no idea where to start. So I'm going to give you guys a few hints, and what I'm trying to develop here is your ability to utilize resources online to sort of help you move through some of the exercises and assignments that we're going to be doing as we move on in this class, especially when you guys are going to start building some simple mobile applications. One thing I want you guys to do is we have to get comfortable with documentation. So as we know, this is called a UI label. So this is hint 1. Look up UI label. So you can just Google that. And then hint 2 is look up attributes of UI label. And what I mean by attributes is these are things that you can change and manipulate in the UI label class. And in this case, remember that we want to change the UI label from what it currently reads is just the word label. When the user presses the button, we want that to read I did it. This is going to be sort of on your own for the rest of the assignment, and I'm going to go over this next time we see each other in class. So what I want to do here is I just want to do a brief video on tricks and tips in case you're working on your Xcode project and you just don't know what to do. You're having a hard time. So remember that right now I'm in the assistant editor view. So if you just want to get rid of this split screen, you go into the standard editor. Okay? And as you know, I'm in the storyboard right now. Anytime you just kind of want to get back to home base, you can open up the project or the navigator. Okay? And in here, that lists everything in your project. So if you want to access any files, you access it via the project navigator. Okay, so remember that and that. So anytime you want to sort of get back to home base. I'm going to run the simulator real quick because I want to show you something that's happening and it might puzzle you and you might have a hard time figuring out how to get back to home base or get back to where you want to be. So we'll run the simulator. Okay, so we're going to do a segue push. Change color, good. And if I hit Command Q to hit the simulator, I get some changes here in the project navigator. So we know that we're in the debug navigator. So things look a little unfamiliar right now. All we have to do is go back to the project navigator and we're back to home base. We can close out the debug area as well. And then if you want to be in your second view controller file, you can go ahead and click there. If you want to go back to main storyboard, you can go ahead and click there. So I'm doing this video just to kind of help you orient yourself in case you press something weird and you don't know what to do. The other thing that you want to sort of keep in mind is right now the simulator is still running. So if you just want to stop the simulator, you can just say stop running the scheme, and then go about your whatever you're doing in Xcode. All right, so I hope this little video was helpful. Once again, good luck with the rest of the assignment, and I will see you next week. Aloha.